Hey everyone, welcome. So today we are diving into an incredibly bizarre, super detailed dream journal entry. Now, on the surface, this thing reads like some wild, surreal fantasy, but once we look a little closer, it actually reveals exactly how our minds process deep-seated anxieties, social exhaustion, and that constant struggle for self-identity. Let's decode this nightmare together. I mean, just look at the sheer absurdity of pairing these two things together, right? A mythic weeping goddess and a mundane spreadsheet program. It sounds almost comical. But as we unpack this dream, you'll see how these seemingly random elements actually hold the exact key to a really profound psychological crisis that the dreamer was going through. We've got a whole list of chaotic, hyper-specific elements to get through here. A colorful tourist train, a descent into a dark sewer, nostalgic memories in an underground Showa-era school, a lost key, a weeping giant Japanese goddess on a ceiling, a stressful Excel test at a shrine, and a betrayal by a friend with a fleshlight. We're going to connect these vivid symbols to universal struggles we all face, things like imposter syndrome, social burnout, and that creeping fear of falling behind in life.
All right, Section 1, into the bizarre nightmare, leaving the waking world behind.
Let's track how this geographic descent perfectly mirrors the dreamer's psychological fall right into the deep unconscious. It starts high up on this colorful tourist train, plunges down into a dirty ditch and sewer, moves further down into an underground school, and finally squeezes through the red seats of a movie theater. The mind is literally dragging the dreamer away from the waking world, step by step. So at the very beginning, the dreamer is on this train with relatives, totally isolated, just admiring the train as if it's some fancy modern art monument. This looks exactly like what psychologists call the persona. You know, our social mask. It's the conscious state, our vanity. The dreamer really wants to be seen as sophisticated and successful, but underneath all that, there's a profound sense of isolation and social fatigue. And it's right here that the dreamer's mind just can no longer maintain that colorful, vanity-filled persona. All that approval-seeking, the mental energy for it is completely blocked, which forces a super jarring retreat. The psyche drags the dreamer off the train, down a narrowing path, and right into a dark, smelly sewer. It's a full-on regression into repressed emotional stress and unresolved complexes. Moving on to Section 2, to the bottom of the unconscious. The shadows we leave behind. So upon reaching the bottom, the dreamer finds themselves in an underground school, reliving these nostalgic memories with faceless classmates. It's this comforting little escape, but when they try to leave this memory to go back to the real world, they realize their key is gone. Psychologically speaking, this is massive. The lost key symbolizes that the dreamer is just not yet ready to face reality. Its absence is a huge red flag. It means you're trapped in a state of regression, totally unequipped to handle your real-world responsibilities right now. Because they have to go back into the dark sewer to find this key, the dreamer runs into someone totally unexpected, an actual middle school friend from a rough, turbulent background. But listen, this isn't really their friend, it's a projection. In Jungian psychology, this is known as the shadow. It's the repressed, unacknowledged, hidden aspects of the self, which often pop up in our dreams as antagonistic figures. Now pay close attention to how this shadow manifests. The friend is sitting on an excavator, a piece of heavy machinery. That is a dead giveaway. It represents the dreamer's unacknowledged, repressed aggression, their power to just smash through boundaries. In waking life, the dreamer completely suppresses this energy to keep up that polite persona we talked about earlier. And by literally telling this friend to wait at the door, the dreamer is still desperately trying to keep all this wild, destructive energy under strict control. Okay, Section 3. The giant goddess's true identity, staring into the collective unconscious. Leaving the shadow waiting, the dreamer squeezes through a crack in a movie theater wall and suddenly enters the realm of universal myth. Looking up, they see this giant weeping Japanese goddess filling the entire ceiling. We hear a narrator explain that her tears are the only thing keeping the earth below alive. This, right here, is the ultimate encounter with the Great Mother archetype. It represents both the life-giving, nurturing aspects of Mother Nature and its devouring, destructive, boundary-dissolving forces. And this dynamic perfectly captures the dual nature of maternal dependency. Take a look at this breakdown. On one hand, you have the positive aspect, absolute protection. Her tears literally sustain the world. But on the negative side, she's terrifying. She's cursing the world from the darkness above. It brings up this intense fear of being devoured, of ego death. Basically, if she wakes up fully, she threatens to crush absolutely everything. It's the psychological terror of losing your individuality to a suffocating, overprotective force. In the dream, the dreamer knows this goddess is suffering and wants her to cross over, but feels this immense guilt about sneaking away while she sleeps. This beautifully mirrors the real-world, painful struggle of psychological independence. Breaking away from a comforting or protective situation often feels like a betrayal, right? But that guilt, that is the absolute cost of self-reliance. Which brings us to Section 4, Real-World Pressure and Shadow, the anxiety of the Excel test. Fleeing down a wooded path, the dreamer ends up at a traditional Japanese shrine, but they are hit with a jarringly modern problem, a computer with a complex Excel test. Not knowing the answer, they lie and say, "I did it." The dreamer tries guessing with emojis, but the real answer is a strict line of complex kanji characters. And this is a brilliant clash. The emoji answer represents their intuitive, emotional, subjective, authentic self. The kanji, on the other hand, represents the cold, logical, objective social rules of patriarchal order. Because they failed this test, the dreamer is left stranded alone in the dark while everyone else boards a sleek bullet train to the waking world. It feels like a crushing defeat. But clinically speaking, failing an exam in a dream like this is what we call a reverse dream. It's actually a psychological protective measure. The subconscious is literally screaming at the dreamer, "Stop forcing growth. Stop trying to meet impossible societal standards and just take a much-needed rest." But of course, things quickly spiral into an absolute nightmare scenario. Left behind in that dark shine, the shadow, that middle school friend, reappears. Except he's no longer waiting at the door. He has now become a servant of the goddess. He's walking through the dark with a blinding flashlight, hunting for the dreamer to offer them up as a human sacrifice. Section 5, Ego Awakening and Integration, the final confrontation. Trapped and absolutely terrified, the dreamer tries to play the ultimate victim, intentionally acting like a helpless, homeless person crying for help in the bushes, hoping the flashlight-wielding shadow will take pity and let them avoid the blinding light of consciousness. But the shadow doesn't buy it for a single second. He shines the flashlight right in their face and delivers this devastating line. "You fool! An idiot like you who doesn't cherish the goddess could never escape. Return to the cursed world." He pierces right through their guilt and deep-seated inferiority complex. And you know what? That brutal insult turns out to be exactly what the dreamer needed. The victim mask completely shatters. The dreamer realizes that playing weak is just not going to save them. They can't run, they can't hide, they can't pretend anymore. This absolute crisis forces the ego to reboot and fight for its psychological survival. So, instead of cowering, the dreamer grits their teeth, stands up against the blinding light and shouts, "Bring it on!" or in Japanese, "Kakate koyo." And here is the most incredible part of this whole explainer. As they wake up from the nightmare, they are physically speaking those exact words out loud in their real bed. That physical, spoken defiance is a massive, hard-earned psychological victory. It's amazing to realize this wasn't just some random horror show. It was a brutal initiation into something called individuation. That's the psychological process of integrating the conscious ego with the unconscious shadow to achieve true independent selfhood. The psyche orchestrated this entire terrifying journey just to force the dreamer to stop hiding behind a fake, colorful persona, to confront their hidden aggressive power, and finally accept their true, messy, authentic self. This analysis reveals just how incredibly hard our minds are working to heal us, even when it feels like we're being tortured in our sleep. So I'll leave you with this. What shadows are you running from in your own waking life? If your mind forced you to take an impossible Excel test in the underworld, would you pass? Or is it time you finally dropped the victim mask and said, "Bring it on," to your own fears? Thanks for exploring this fascinating descent with me today.